To get started on this project, you should have already finished the exercise of creating your own cartoon character. I don't intend for yours to look like mine, but I want you to use your cartoon character for the rest of this project. Your character should have 2 eyes that show the pupils. You should also have a nose and a mouth and 2 eyebrows. It should have hair or some sort of hat or head covering, at least 1 visible ear, some sort of overall head shape, and also some sort of overall body shape, so no floating head. Anything else that you wish to add to your design is totally up to you. The first thing we need to do is launch Adobe Animate, and let's create a new document. The size of the document can be the default Full HD, which will give you a width of 1920 by 1080 on the height. The frame rate, we're going to set that down to 24 frames per second. And we'll keep the platform type as ActionScript 3. Let's say Create. The first thing we need to do is let's zoom out to Show All. And let's change our layer 1 to be our rough sketch layer. Inside of this layer is where we want to place the picture that we drew. So let's go up to File, down to Import, and choose Import to Stage. This will place the picture right directly onto our stage. Next, locate your drawing. In my case, I've got it on my desktop inside of my folder. Now, if for whatever reason you can't select the picture that you created, if it's grayed out, you need to change up what you've enabled. In my case, it's only looking for PNG files. So I'm just going to change this over to a JPEG because that's what I created, or you can choose all files and this will get everything. We'll choose my cartoon, we'll say Open, and this will place it in the center of my page. Now if yours comes in too large the way mine has, that's totally fine. Just choose your Free Transform tool, click on the upper edge, and you can hold down Shift as you click and drag, and this will bring it down to size. Just make sure it's kept proportional, and we want to keep it nice and centered within your overall space. That looks good for there. We'll zoom back in. With your rough drawings selected and placed in there, let's return down to your layer. We'll right click on it. Let's open up the layer properties. And inside of the layer properties, let's drop down the opacity of it just so that we don't see it too much. And we're also going to turn this into a guided layer. We'll say OK with that. As a guided layer, this won't show up if we ever have to start to animate it, and dropping the opacity makes it a little bit easier to see. The final thing we'll do to this layer is lock it down just so that we don't accidentally draw on top of it. Instead, we want to create a new layer on top, and we'll call this our face layer. Now, as we create all the different parts of the face, I'm going to draw it based on the needs of my drawing. Your drawing may be different, but here's one thing to keep in mind. Everything that we draw needs to have its own individual layer. If you intend to animate it or move it in any way, especially if it's going to be moving independently of other parts, every part has to have its own layer. So I'm going to take this not just one part at a time, but also one layer and one drawing at a time. Later on, we're going to pull all this together and save it up as a symbol. So to get started, looking at my face, I can see he kind of looks very rectangular, but he's got some rounded features that need to be pulled out. So I'm going to choose my regular rectangle tool, and going over to my tool options, I want to make sure to work with object drawing mode turned on. So with it highlighted, whenever I click and drag and select my object, it gives me a blue bounding box and not the little dots on the inside. With that selected, I can choose whatever fill color I need it to be for my skin tone. Since he is cartoonish, I'm going to give him a little bit more of a higher, brighter skin tone rather than a traditional one. So I'm going to set this one here. I'm going to set my stroke color to be slightly, I don't want it to be 100% black. I like to use a darker version of the skin tone. So we'll set it to be a dark brown. And I'm going to set my stroke size to be a little bit larger. Later on, I can always go back and change and tweak the style of this. And I do want to emphasize, yours can be different than what I'm doing. Change up the fill color, stroke, skin tone. This is your project. We'll delete it away. Now, since he's got an overall rounded rectangle look and feel to him, I'm going to go over to the bottom of my properties and change my rectangle options to have rounded corners. In my case, I've set a value of 100 as the corner radius, and this will give us a nice rounded little rectangle that I can work from. With that established, I can click and drag and roughly draw off the position that I need it to be. Keep in mind, at this point, we're going to clean up the overall look and feel of your cartoon character. So you can make it as precise as you want, or you can, and following your illustration, or you can clean it up and make it look a little bit more correct. Now, one other thing I do want to show you. With this established, I could go in with my black arrow tool and click on the edges and start to drag around and morph and change my object. Another thing you can do is blend together multiple objects. So I'm going to choose my rectangle tool again. Since his face is going to be wider, I'm going to click and drag and draw a separate object just for the face. We'll put that one on top there. Clean it up a bit, I'll choose my free transform tool and let's center it up. Make that look nice from there. And a little bit smaller on the sides. With two objects created, use your black arrow selection tool and you can select both of those, and I want to join both of these together as one solid object. We can go up to Modify, Combine Shapes, and you can choose the union of both of those. This will take both of these and combine them together into one solid object. Now right now I can still see the line between both of these. Since I was drawing in object mode turned on, I'm going to double click on it. This will take me in my object drawing mode, and then I can select the lines that were there and simply delete them away. And this gives us one solid shape that I can now work with. Double click to return back to scene 1. And from here is where I can start to tweak my face and do whatever I need to give me my overall final rough shape of it. With that done, maybe I'll make one final tweak of making the line be just a little bit thicker. I think I like it to be about 8 or 9 points for that. Again, the shape of your head needs to fit the shape and the style of your drawing. Next, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to work on an ear. One thing about the ear is that since you've drawn the one on one side, you don't have to necessarily draw a second one on the other side. You just simply draw one and we're going to flip it over to the other side to make a copy of it. So as I've done with the others, just choose the appropriate tool that you think is necessary to draw it off. Alright, with it established, I'll click on it and zoom in. I've got kind of a unique problem. I don't want it to have a solid line going around the entire shape of my ear. I want it to taper and eventually have no line on this right side. This way, whenever I rotate my head, I can have it blend in with the head shape without it looking kind of awkward. Now to do this, with my object selected, I can go to my Properties panel. I'm going to change my width profile to have a tapered edge. Whoops, so I can do it again. There we go. But I don't want it to just taper down to here. I actually want it to stop a little bit closer in. Now, if this is something that you want to do, here's how to fix that. I'm going to double click on my object. This will bring us into object drawing mode. And then carefully I'm going to click on the line shape itself. This will give us the outline of just the line. With that done, choose your eraser tool and go into the tool properties. So in your properties panel, choose the tool and change your erasing mode to erase away only the lines. With Erase Lines selected, you can click on this area and erase away just the line portion, and you can see it won't affect the fill color, which is what we want. Also, while I'm here, I'm going to get my line brush tool. I'm going to paint in any inside parts of the ear that I need to establish as well. So little squiggly bits. Cool. With that done, we can return back to our normal scene, and you can see I've got my ear nice and established. Now, since this ear is something that's going to be animated, it needs to be on its own timeline. And I accidentally forgot to create a timeline, so let's do that now. With the ear selected, I can always right-click on it and choose Distribute to Layers. And this will make a copy of it and put it on its own layer. You can see in this case it put it on layer 2 and it put it below my face. That's okay for now, but I'm going to double click. I'm going to call this my left ear. And I'm going to drag that layer on top of my face because that's the placement that I want it to be. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer. So right click on that. And let's do a right ear. With that duplicated, you can see it's got a copy of it here. We'll back out. And I'm going to place it all the way on this side. But for this one, I'm going to right click on it and go down to transform. Then go down to the very bottom and choose flip horizontal. And this will flip it over to the other side. This will give me my copy of my ear without having to redraw the entire thing. So now you get the overall flow of what we're going to be doing to establish your head. Everything needs to have its own individual layer and timeline. Take it one symbol at a time and make sure each of your symbols is saved inside of its own object drawing. So when you select it, it should have a blue outline and everything is nice and grouped together. For now, I'm going to speed through and draw off the rest of the shapes of my face. Alright, and with this done, you can now see on my timeline that all of the different parts of my face have their own individual layer, and I've tried to effectively rename each of those layers so that I understand which part of it is. To point out a couple of different things. So when it came to the body, since the body's not going to be animated at all parts of this body were kept as one individual part. So I didn't do a separate layer for the neck and the different parts of the shoulders and his shirt that he's wearing. However, when it came to the hair, I did put this on two separate layers because when I go to animate this, I want to be able to turn the head and I want to have this first part or the front part of his hair be movable, and so this will move on its own and it has its own layer. And the second part or the back part of the hair is going to have its own layer as well, so that it can also have a shape tween whenever I select it. Each of my eyebrows, left and right, has their own layer. Same way for my eyes, those have their own layer. And I even put the pupils inside of the eye on their own layer as well. So make sure that you're not just drawing the pupils inside of the white of the eye, but those are two separate things. Of course, the little white highlight in the eye is within that as well. So as you draw this, think about your head in 3 dimensions, what part needs to be animated, what part needs to move around, and other things that could stay still. With this done, we'll go up to File and let's do a save. Do make sure that you've got your name on it, and you can call this your lip sync face, and we're going to save it as an animate document file format. I'll replace the one that I already have. This is what you're going to upload to Moodle for this exercise grade, but we're also going to be continuing to use this as part of your project grade.